In the days when the earth was young, humanity had spread across the land, building cities and families, generation after generation descending from Adam and Eve. But as the years passed and the population grew, something terrible happened. The hearts of men and women became filled with wickedness. From morning until night, their thoughts were only of evil continuously. Violence covered the earth like a dark blanket, and people forgot about God who had created them. They forgot His love, His commandments, and His ways. The Lord looked down from heaven and saw that the corruption had spread everywhere, infecting every corner of the world. It grieved His heart deeply, causing Him divine sorrow that the people He had lovingly created had chosen such a dark path. God regretted that He had made mankind on the earth, and His heart was filled with pain. The wickedness was so great that God decided He would wipe mankind from the face of the earth, along with the animals, creatures that move along the ground, and birds of the sky, for He was deeply troubled that He had made them. But in all this darkness, there was one light shining brightly in the world. His name was Noah, and he was 500 years old when our story truly begins. Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God every single day of his long life. While everyone around him chose evil, Noah chose good. While others forgot God, Noah remembered Him and honored Him in everything he did. Noah had a wife who shared his faith, and together they had raised 3 sons: Shem, Ham, and Japheth, who were now grown men with wives of their own. The Bible tells us in Genesis 6-9 that Noah was a righteous man, blameless among the people of his time, and he walked faithfully with God. This was no small thing in a world drowning in corruption. Noah's righteousness stood out like a bright star in the darkest night. God saw Noah's faithfulness, his pure heart, and his obedience, and Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord, as recorded in Genesis 6-8. One day, as Noah was going about his daily work, God spoke to him with a message that would change everything. "Noah," God said, His voice both terrible and wonderful, "I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth." Genesis 6:13. Can you imagine hearing such words? The entire world was going to be destroyed. But God had a plan to save Noah and his family, and God gave Noah very specific instructions, speaking with clarity and precision about what needed to be done. "So make yourself an ark of cypress wood," God commanded, "make rooms in it, and coat it with pitch inside and out." Genesis 6:14. The Lord then gave Noah the exact measurements for this massive vessel. "This is how you are to build it. The ark is to be 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high." Genesis 6:15. A cubit was about 18 inches, which meant this ark would be approximately 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet high, as large as a modern ocean liner. It would be a massive undertaking, the largest construction project the world had ever seen. God continued with His detailed instructions. "Make a roof for it, leaving below the roof an opening 1 cubit high all around. Put a door in the side of the ark and make lower, middle, and upper decks." Genesis 6:16. This wasn't just a simple boat, it was a 3-story floating fortress designed to withstand the greatest catastrophe the world would ever know. Then God explained why this ark was necessary. "I am going to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, every creature that has the breath of life in it. Everything on earth will perish." Genesis 6:17. These were sobering, frightening words that revealed the magnitude of what was coming. But then came the promise, the hope in the midst of judgment. "But I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you." Genesis 6:18. God was going to save Noah, his wife, their 3 sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives, 8 people in total who would survive to repopulate the earth. But they wouldn't be alone in the ark. God gave Noah another incredible instruction. "You are to bring into the ark 2 of all living creatures, male and female, to keep them alive with you. 2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive." Genesis 6:19-20. Imagine the scene. Noah was going to gather animals from all over the world. Lions and lambs, elephants and mice, eagles and sparrows. Every species that walked, crawled, flew, or slithered would need to be represented. God also told Noah to take every kind of food that would be eaten and store it away as food for his family and all the animals. Genesis 6:21. The logistics were staggering. Feeding and caring for all these creatures for an unknown length of time would require enormous preparation and storage space. But here's what makes Noah's faith so remarkable. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. Genesis 6:22. He didn't argue, didn't question, didn't doubt. In a world where it had never rained and flooding was unknown, Noah believed God's warning and obeyed completely, beginning the monumental task of building the ark that would save life itself from extinction. For many long years, perhaps even a century, Noah and his sons worked tirelessly on the ark. Can you imagine the scene? Day after day, year after year, the sound of hammers and saws rang through the air as this massive vessel slowly took shape. The neighbors must have thought Noah had lost his mind. Why are you building a giant boat on dry land? They would mock and laugh. There's no ocean here! It has never even rained! But Noah never stopped working, never stopped warning them, never stopped preaching righteousness to the people around him. 2 Peter 2-5 calls Noah a preacher of righteousness, telling us that he tried to warn others about the coming judgment. But the people wouldn't listen. They were too busy with their wicked ways, eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, completely unconcerned about God or the future, as Jesus himself would later describe them in Matthew 24-37-39. They had no idea what was about to happen. Finally, after decades of faithful work, the ark was complete. It stood there, enormous and ready, a testimony to Noah's faith and obedience. Then God spoke to Noah again with words that must have made his heart race with both fear and anticipation. Go into the ark, you and your whole family, because I have found you righteous in this generation. Genesis 7:1. The time had come at last. God gave Noah further instructions about the animals. Take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, a male and its mate, and 1 pair of every kind of unclean animal, a male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird, male and female, to keep their various kinds alive throughout the earth. Genesis 7:2-3. This was more animals than Noah had originally been told. 7 pairs of clean animals and birds, but still only 1 pair of unclean animals. Then God told Noah the timeline. 7 days from now I will send rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the earth every living creature I have made. Genesis 7-4. They had 7 days to finish the final preparations. 7 days until the end of the world as they knew it. Genesis 7-5 records simply. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Again, complete obedience. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters came on the earth. Genesis 7-6. For 6 centuries he had walked faithfully with God, and now he would see God's judgment and salvation with his own eyes. Then something miraculous began to happen. The animals started coming. They didn't need to be hunted or captured or forced. Genesis 7-9 tells us that pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life in them came to Noah and entered the ark, male and female, just as God had commanded. Picture the scene. Elephants trudging up the ramp, giraffes ducking their long necks through the doorway, kangaroos hopping aboard, lions walking calmly beside zebras, bears ambling in next to deer, snakes slithering alongside mice, eagles flying in next to sparrows. Every creature you can imagine, large and small, fierce and gentle, all making their way into the ark in orderly fashion, guided by God's invisible hand. It must have been the most amazing wildlife parade ever witnessed. Noah, his wife, Shem and his wife, Ham and his wife, and Japheth and his wife, all 8 members of Noah's family, entered the ark along with all these animals, just as God had commanded. Genesis 7-7-8. They brought all the food supplies they had gathered, enough to feed this floating zoo for months. And then, on the 17th day of the 2nd month of Noah's 600th year, something happened that had never happened before in the history of the world. The flood comes. Genesis 7:11-4. Genesis 7:11 records the exact date with precision. In the 600th year of Noah's life, on the 17th day of the second month, on that day all the springs of the great deep burst forth, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. This wasn't just rain falling from the sky. The very structure of the earth broke apart. Underground reservoirs of water exploded upward with tremendous force, and the sky itself seemed to tear open as rain poured down in torrents, unlike anything the world had ever seen. Before this moment, the Bible indicates that God had watered the earth with mist, Genesis 2-6, and many scholars believe it had never rained before the flood. Now the rain came down in sheets, in buckets, in overwhelming cascades that turned the air itself into water. Genesis 7:12 tells us, "And rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days. Imagine rain falling continuously, without stopping, for more than a month. But before the rain began, there's a beautiful detail recorded in Genesis 7:16. After all the animals in Noah's family entered the ark, the Lord shut him in. God himself closed the door. This detail is so touching. God personally sealed the ark, protecting those inside from the destruction outside. It was God's hand that saved them, God's power that would preserve them through the coming storm. As the rain continued to fall and the underground waters continued to burst forth, the waters rose higher and higher on the earth. Genesis 7:17 says, "The waters increased and lifted the ark high above the earth." The massive vessel that had sat on dry ground for so long now floated, rising up as the floodwaters swelled beneath it. They rose greatly on the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water, Genesis 7:18. Inside the ark, Noah and his family must have felt the gentle rocking as their wooden home became a boat at last, fulfilling its purpose. The waters kept rising, covering everything. They rose so much that even the highest mountains under the entire heavens were covered. The waters rose and covered the mountains to a depth of more than 15 cubits. Genesis 7:19-20. That's over 20 feet above the tallest peaks. Every hill, every mountain, every high place was submerged under the universal flood. Outside the ark, the scene was one of total devastation. Every living thing that moved on land perished: birds, livestock, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all mankind. Everything on dry land that had the breath of life in its nostrils died. Genesis 7:21-2. The judgment God had warned about had come to pass exactly as he said it would. All those people who had laughed at Noah, all those who had refused to listen to his preaching, all those who had continued in their wickedness, they were gone. Genesis 7:23 solemnly states, "Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. People and animals and the creatures that move along the ground and the birds were wiped from the earth. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. In the entire world, only 8 people survived, safe inside the ark that faith had built. The waters flooded the earth for 150 days. Genesis 7:24. Covering everything. A watery grave for a wicked world. But inside the ark, life continued. Noah fed the animals, cared for them, trusted God day by day as the ark floated on the endless sea. They couldn't see land, couldn't see the sun clearly through the rain and clouds, couldn't know when it would end. But Noah had faith that the same God who had closed the door would also open it again when the time was right. And God had not forgotten Noah and all the wild animals and livestock that were with him in the ark, as we would soon see when the waters began to recede and a new world would emerge from beneath the flood.